I did a video talking about this topic a long time ago on my very first YouTube channel. Unfortunately, that video no longer exists here on YouTube, and ever since I made that video, I never discussed this topic ever again here on YouTube until now. I was debating whether I would do a video talking about this, and after debating back and forth on whether I should or whether I shouldn't, I decided to do a dice roll, and the dice roll determined that I should talk about this. So I'm going to talk about it here. I'm going to talk about it now. This is the second time I've ever discussed this topic here on YouTube, and this is going to be the last time I ever talk about this in full here on YouTube. I think most of us who were old enough to have been around for this day remember exactly where we were the morning of September 11th, 2001. I was born in 1994, so at the time I was 6 years old. I was just about to turn 7 years old the next following month in October. My birthday is on October 11th, which coincidentally is 31 days later. So I was just about to turn 7 at the time of all of this happening. I was young, but I wasn't too young to not fully understand what was going on. It took me a little while to finally catch on, but once I caught on, I realized that what I was witnessing was something I would never, ever forget. And to this day, I will never forget for the rest of my life. I remember exactly where I was on September 11th, 2001. Now, a little bit of a backstory, real quick, before I get into the events of that day. I had lived in the state of Indiana from 1994 to 2001. I've lived up in Hammond, Indiana, which is right near Gary, Indiana, and about 40, 50 minutes, maybe an hour long drive depending on traffic from the city of Chicago. I lived up there from 94 to 01, and I didn't move down to Tennessee permanently until the fall of 2001. I had visited the state of Tennessee in the winter of 2000 and the early springtime of 2001, right before I graduated kindergarten. I graduated kindergarten up in Indiana. I started first grade here in the state of Tennessee, and I took all my grades minus kindergarten here in Tennessee. First grade all the way to 12th, I did all of those here in the state of Tennessee. We had just moved down about a few weeks prior to September 11th, so we were just getting used to the area. I was getting used to my new friends at school, the teachers I had at school. I just started first grade. Actually, I just started first grade 2 weeks prior. So I was 2 weeks into first grade here in my well, not my hometown. Well, I guess you could say it's my hometown because I pretty much grew up here my entire life. I mean, I was born in Indiana, but I've lived here in Tennessee a majority of my life. I've lived here for well over 20 years now, and I'm 27 going 28 next month in October, so I've lived here for a good 20 plus years of my life. But anyways, I remember waking up that morning, September 11th, 2001. Nice, beautiful, sunny day. It's kind of eerie because it was mostly sunny everywhere in the United States. I know that the night before I did my research, the night before in New York City, it had actually rained. There was a thunderstorm in the area, and it had rained the night before September 11th, 2001. But when morning time came on September 11th, everything was everything seemed to be peaceful. It seemed to be, a nice, beautiful, sunny day that would just go by, and we'll see what happens on this day. I remember waking up and, well, my mom waking me up at the time to get me ready for school. I actually lived not that far from the elementary school, so I didn't take the bus. It was literally like a car ride, like literally just a few blocks away. So I woke up, had breakfast, had cereal. I remember exactly what I was watching on TV that morning. This is about 6 o'clock in the morning. I remember I had watched an episode of Hey Arnold, and then afterwards, I know my friend Orbital Sigma's gonna cringe when I say this, but I watched an episode of Pokemon afterwards. This is back when it was, I believe it was Ash, Misty, and Tracer. Brock was already gone at that point, and they replaced him with this fucking photographer guy. He was completely irrelevant. I don't even remember what the episode was about. All I know is that it had Ash, Misty, and that guy in it. That's all I remember. Anyways, after I watched that episode, then obviously, I started packing up, getting ready to go. And on my way to school, I noticed that the birds outside were acting kind of suspicious. Like they would be in one spot, and then they get up and fly off, only for them to immediately come back, and then fly off and then immediately come back. At first I thought they were, going after like a animal, a dead animal, something like that, but there wasn't anything there. And some of the birds were also like flying around in weird directions. So I kind of already had a feeling that something was off, but I didn't know exactly what it was. I guess, you ever hear that saying that animals can sense something before humans can? I'm assuming that they could sense what was about to happen before we could. Like they knew what was about to transpire before it happened. And I remember going into class. My first class was kind of eerie to say this, but my first class was history class. How eerie of it to be history class, knowing that what I and the classroom was about to witness that day, what the world was about to witness that day, would be part of history forever. I remember sitting in history class. This is about 8:50, 8:55, so about 10 minutes after the North Tower had been hit by Flight 11. And I remember my principal came over the intercom. I don't remember her name. It's been so long ago. But she came up on the intercom and told everybody that we had a situation going on in New York City for the teachers to lock the classroom doors and to turn on the television. We had two sets of TVs. We had the one big old box TV, the big old box TV that you would wheel around, that you see wheeled around with the VHS attached to it, so you could pop in VHS tapes and stuff like that. Yeah, this is how long ago this was. Bear with me. This was over 20 years ago, so this is quite some time ago. And there was another set of TVs. There was a TV that was mounted to the wall. It was raised, elevated high enough to where kids couldn't touch it, but the teachers could touch it and turn on the TV. And it came with basic television channels like ABC, CBS, Fox, NBC, PBS, basically those channels. And I remember they turned it to, I believe it was CBS, if I remember correctly. I think it was CBS. And they turned it on to CBS, and they showed the North Tower with this big old fucking gaping hole in the side of the building. And At first, I didn't quite understand what was going on because, bear with me, I was pretty young at the time. But once the news started to explain it, they basically said that a plane, they don't know what size plane, they don't know if it was like some itty bitty dodo plane, they don't know if it was like a large jet. All they know is that it was a plane, had flown into the North Tower about 10 minutes prior. And I remember at the time I was really confused because they kept panning it out, and you see New York City, you see the Isle of Manhattan, and you see these two big ass buildings. One of them has a big fucking gaping hole in the side with smoke billowing out and flames and stuff, and you can see parts of the plane inside the building. But what was so eerie was that the sky was so clear. There was not a single cloud in the sky in New York City. Not a single one. Perfectly sunny out. So I was confused. I was like, how does a plane fly into a building that big? How does a plane fly into a building that big in perfect daylight? Unless there was like some sort of mechanical issue, unless it was a suicidal air traffic control pilot that wanted to take his life and everybody else on the plane's life as well, or something sinister was going on. And I remember me in the classroom watching, trying to figure out what was going on because we were young at the time. Like, I didn't even know what the World Trade Center was. All I all I knew was that I'm watching on this itty bitty box TV mounted to the fucking wall. I'm watching these two tall buildings, really tall skyscrapers in New York City, and one of them has a big ass hole in it from a plane, and it's on fire. And literally a few minutes later, this is a moment that I will never forget for the rest of my life. There are so many camera angles of the second plane hitting the South Tower, but the camera angle that I was able to catch was when they panned the camera back and started showing the Isle of Manhattan. And if you look up, in, I believe it was the upper right hand corner, you could see this object starting to come down. And it started coming down fast. And it was getting closer and closer and closer and closer and closer. At first, I was thinking it was a helicopter. I actually saw it. I don't know if anybody else in the classroom saw it before I did, but I saw it. Because I was actually sitting in the front row of the classroom. I forgot to bring that up. I was sitting front row of the classroom. So I had a good view of the TV. And the TV was a pretty decent sized TV. Like, not like one of those really big, bulky TVs, but big enough to where you could see the picture and make out what's going on pretty clearly. And I remember seeing this object. It kind of seemed like it was floating down, but it was coming down really fast. And I was thinking, what the hell is that? Is that like a news helicopter or something? But then once it started getting closer to the buildings, that's when I thought to myself, that's not a second plane, is it? And sure enough, as soon as I thought that, bam! Flight 175 hit the South Tower. And that's when we knew, oh boy, something very serious is happening here. Something sinister is going on. Everybody in the classroom started freaking out. Like, we didn't know how to fucking react. Like, all we could do was just start screaming. And seeing the South Tower get hit and this big giant fireball just starts bursting up into the sky. And I knew it was the second tower. I immediately knew it was the second tower that got hit. There were some people in the classroom that were thinking it was a reflection, that what they saw was a reflection, that there had been an explosion in the North Tower. And at first, the news was reporting that it was an explosion in the North Tower. But then the reports started coming in, no, it wasn't a bomb that went off in the North Tower. A second plane had just hit the World Trade Center. And at first, there were some kids in my class that thought a second plane hit the tower that had already been hit. But I knew it was the other building because it was much, much lower. And both buildings looked like they had holes in them. And sure enough, they started showing the replays, and the South Tower had been hit by Flight 175. And the speed that that plane came in, my God. I know Flight 11 came in really quick. There's only like a couple of footages that exist of Flight 11 hitting the North Tower. Of course, the most legendary one is with the firefighters on the ground as the camera pans over to the World Trade Center and the plane hits the tower and the guy says, "Holy shit." There's one that was taken from somebody in an automobile on a highway, and it shows the plane hitting it, but the distance is so far that you could barely make out what's going on, but you could see the plane hitting the building. And then there's one of news reporters on the ground getting ready to start I think there was like some sort of like um, race or something, like, a running type of race. A bunch of guys running around, I think, some park in lower Manhattan or something. And they just so happen to be recording at the exact time that Flight 11 hit the World Trade Center. And Flight 175, I've seen all the camera angles, I've seen all the videos of people on the ground and the news telecast of the plane hitting the South Tower. Seeing it live, like going back and watching it is one thing. But seeing it actually happen, seeing it live is an experience I will never forget for the rest of my life. And I say about 10 minutes later, our principal comes back on the intercom and basically says that the United States government is shutting the country down, that they're officially listing this as a terrorist attack on the United States, and that everybody is to be sent home immediately. And I remember, I remember packing up my stuff because obviously they were sending us home. And my mom and dad never really got along, but my dad told me that he saw it. He was actually trying to watch, he was actually trying to watch the news that morning on his TV, and he just so happened to hear about it, and they ended up calling my mom and dad telling us that they're letting us out of school early because of what's going on, because it's a terrorist attack, to come pick us up and take us home. I ended up going back to my mom's place, which was just a few blocks away from the school. So I only missed, I say 10 minutes of 9/11. And by the time I got back home, I say about a good 5 minutes later, the Pentagon just got hit. Um, what was the name? What was the, not the name, the number. I'm trying to remember the exact number. I know it was Flight 11 that hit the North Tower. I know it was Flight 175 that hit the South Tower. Flight 93 is the one that got taken over by the passengers and hit the ground. Flight 77, that's the one. It was United Airlines Flight 77 that hit the Pentagon, the side of the Pentagon. And then literally a few minutes later, Flight 93 hit the ground in a field out in rural Pennsylvania. And the entire time the country was basically going under a lockdown because obviously we're being attacked by terrorists. I remember my mom and dad were, well, my mom was panicking. My dad was more pissed off. Like, he knew what was going on because my father, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this before, but my father has served in the Vietnam War. He was a part of the 101st Airborne Division in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, Fort Campbell, Tennessee, and he had served in the war in Vietnam in the late 60s. So he already knew what was going on. Like, the second that the second the first he told me the second the first plane hit the North Tower, he already had a suspicion because of how sunny outside it was in New York. But then once the second plane hit the South Tower, that's when he knew that it was a full-on terrorist attack. And he was pissed. Like, he was pissed the fuck off that our country was getting attacked because he fought and nearly died for the country. He served for our country, so of course he has a right to be pissed off. I mean, we're sitting here getting attacked by people that we don't know who the fuck they are, where they're coming from, and we don't know if more is on the way. So I'm sitting there, just, they didn't want me to watch the TV, but I ended up watching it anyways, and I know you're probably gonna say, why would your parents let you watch TV? They were watching it too. They tried to get me not to watch it, but I just wanted to see what was going on because I was I was a kid. I was curious to find out what exactly is going on, what the hell was happening here. Like, I didn't even know what terrorists were. Okay, I didn't even know what a terrorist attack was. I didn't even know what Pearl Harbor was at the time. I wouldn't find out about Pearl Harbor till later on when they started bringing up the Pearl Harbor attacks that led to the United States jumping into World War II. I didn't even know what Pearl Harbor was. And my dad brought up Pearl Harbor, and I asked him what it was, and he told me, you'll find out, you'll find out later. You're too young to understand, blah, 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 blah. And I remember just sitting there watching the news with them, and then all of a sudden, here comes the South Tower crumbling to the ground. I saw the South Tower collapse live. I actually saw that building collapse live. And when I saw it, at first I thought that only the top half of the building had fell down. I didn't know the entire building basically caved in on itself. And oh my god, the smoke. It looked like a nuclear winter. It looked like a mixture of fog, like very thick, very heavy fog, and a blizzard in September. It was so fucking eerie. And then seeing the North Tower still standing there, 30 minutes away from it collapsing, that was so fucking eerie. And then, of course, 30 minutes later, the North Tower ends up collapsing, and two of the most iconic skyscrapers of all time are taken away. I can't snap my fucking fingers right now. Just like that. I remember for the rest of the day, all I had on TV, all I had on TV the rest of the day, all that my mom and dad had on TV the rest of the day was coverage on 9/11. Obviously, no further attacks happened that day. The only other things that happened was that Building 7 ended up collapsing. A side of the Pentagon collapsed, Flight 93 hit the ground in Pennsylvania, and Building 7 of the World Trade Center collapsed, which Building 7 remains to this day one of the biggest conspiracy theories in 9/11. And I remember we didn't go, well, I didn't go to school. Me and the rest of the town, we didn't go to school again until the very next week. Like, they literally kept us home the entire week. And we didn't go back until the following Tuesday. Literally a week later is when we finally went back to school. And man, it was so fucking eerie. Because I remember going back to school and everything just being so quiet. Like, everybody was so quiet. All the teachers would do was just give us our work, tell us what we need to do, get to it. They wouldn't even teach us. They would just give us the work, tell us to do it, and we do it. And it stayed that way for quite some time. I remember the morning after 9/11 on September 12th. I remember me and my dad, we we went to go, I believe we went to go up to Walmart. And this is not the Walmart that's currently here in my town. This is the old Walmart before they built the super center. And we tried, my dad wanted to get, I don't remember exactly what he wanted to get from there, probably like drinks or something. And it was closed. Like, everything was closed. Dollar General was closed, Family Dollar was closed, the fast food restaurants was closed, Walmart was closed, everything was closed. It was like Christmas, except on September 12th, 2001. Everything had shut down. I have never in my life heard my town be so quiet. You couldn't even hear the birds. It was so fucking quiet. You ever hear the saying that it's so quiet sometimes you could hear a needle drop? This was so quiet. It would be like if you were deaf. There's no sound nowhere. And if you ran into somebody, they looked emotionless. They looked like a ghost. That was the most eerie experience. One of the most eeriest experiences I've ever had in my life. Things wouldn't go back to normal until about 2 weeks later. And then obviously, we have to push forward, we have to move on, and slowly we started, pushing forward and starting to slowly move on from the events of that day. Obviously, as you know, we ended up having the war on terror. We ended up going overseas and fighting Al Qaeda in Iraq and Afghanistan. 10 years later, May 2011, we ended up finally, nearly 10 years later, killing Osama bin Laden. And the rest is history. I will never forget September 11th, 2001 for as long as I live. I will never forget my experience with that day. I know it probably wasn't the best in-depth experience you've ever heard somebody give of September 11th, but that's my experience with the day. Now, I'm going to say this right here, right now. I don't mean any disrespect to the victims who died that day, the near 3,000 people, the 2,996 people who died on that day. I don't mean any disrespect to them, except to the terrorists. They can obviously burn in fucking hell for all eternity for what they did. But I'm sorry. I'm not going to sit here and fully believe the complete 100% official story that the media tries to give us about the events of that day. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. I don't buy the official story. There are a lot of very strange, very eerie conspiracy theories regarding that day that to this day remain unanswered and will probably remain unanswered for the rest of time. Do I believe in conspiracy theories about 9/11? In truth, yes. Not all of them, but some of them I do believe. Most notably, Building 7. How exactly how exactly did Building 7 come down if it only got a little bit of damage from the north and south tower collapsing? How is it that Building 7 came down in an almost demolition-like manner? How is it that BBC News was reporting on the collapse of Building 7 of the World Trade Center and that there was mass chaos going on throughout the street, but yet in the background, and if you don't believe me, I will put the fucking video here so you can see for yourself. Copyright be damned. There is a video floating out there on the internet of BBC News in England reporting on September 11th, talking about Building 7 collapsing, and Building 7 is seen in the background still standing.
Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. Apparently that's only a few hundred yards away from where the World Trade Center towers were. And it seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. There's almost a sense downtown in New York behind me, down by the World Trade Centers, of just an area completely closed off as the rescue workers try to do their job. But this isn't the first building that has suffered as a result. We know that part of the Marriott Hotel next to the World Trade Center also collapsed as a result of this huge amount of falling debris from 110 floors of the two twin towers of the World Trade Center. As you can see behind me, the Trade Center appears to be still burning. We see these huge clouds of smoke and ash, and we know that behind that there's an empty piece of what was a very familiar New York skyline, a symbol of the financial prosperity of this city, but completely disappeared now, and New York is still unable to take on board what has happened to them today.
Presumably there were very few people in the Salomon building when it collapsed. I mean, there were, I suppose, fears of possible further collapses around the area.
That's what you would hope, because this whole downtown area behind me has been completely sealed off and evacuated, apart from the emergency workers. That was done by the mayor, Rudy Giuliani, much earlier today because of, course, the dreadful collapse of the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. But New York, very much a city.
How are they talking about something that collapsed that hadn't have collapsed yet? You don't find that strange? You don't find that eerie? Here they are. They're not talking about, oh, if the building collapsed. No, they're talking about the building has collapsed. Meanwhile, it's still standing in the background. That I find to be extremely eerie and extremely suspicious. Like, it's one thing to say, oh, this building might be collapsing soon. But to come out and basically say the building has collapsed, there's mass chaos throughout the street, there's a whole bunch of smoke all over the place, there's fires all over the place, and yet the building is still standing. And then literally a few minutes after you report that, the building actually does collapse. I don't know if that's some glitch in the Matrix type shit, or if something suspicious was going on there. Why did the underbelly of Flight 175, the plane that hit the South Tower, if you look at still pictures of it right before it hits the South Tower, why does the underbelly not resemble that of a Boeing 747? I've heard people say that the plane that hit the South Tower wasn't an actual plane, that it was a missile with wings on it designed to look like a plane. I've heard people make conspiracy theories that the actual planes were taken to a hangar, a secret government hangar, and everybody on board was basically shot and killed by top secret government agents. But before they did that, they were told to make phone calls out to their loved ones to basically say goodbye. Hence all the phone calls you get from the planes on 9/11. I've heard that the actual planes that hit the North and South Tower and the Pentagon and Flight 93 were actually just missiles. I've heard so many conspiracy theories about that day. Flight 77 is one that I still to this day don't understand and will never understand. How exactly did a terrorist with only a few months of training to fly, how does a terrorist take a Boeing 747 and fly it in a perfect angle into the side of the Pentagon, and instead of leaving this massive gaping hole, only causes only one section of the Pentagon to cave in on itself? It doesn't leave this big ass gaping hole in the side. I mean, the hole was pretty big, but when you look at pictures of it, it's not big enough for a Boeing 747. It looks like a bomb went off instead. Like somebody put a bomb in there and that went off. If a Boeing 747 on the ground was hitting the Pentagon at that angle, at that speed, why is it that the only damage to the furthest ring inside the Pentagon is a small 5-foot hole? If we're talking a Boeing 747, that would have fucking ripped through each and every single floor of the Pentagon, all the way into the inner course of the Pentagon, where the little part is inside the Pentagon with like the trees and the itty bitty little mini park. It would have ripped right through each of those floors, right into the inner part, and probably would have went to the other side. I don't think it would have came out the other side of the Pentagon, on the other side of the building, but it would have made it all the way to the inner part of the Pentagon. And yet it doesn't. Why was there barely any airplane debris found at the site of Flight 77? They found the wings. They found pieces of the airplane, but they never found the full body of the plane. Flight 93. Where is the wreckage of Flight 93? Where is it? How does a plane that was taken over by passengers, how does a plane crash into a field in Royal, Pennsylvania, and yet there's no wreckage found? There's no black boxes, orange boxes, whatever they call them. There's no boxes. There's no wreckage, no wings, nothing. All that's there is a big gaping hole with a whole bunch of smoke billowing out. I've heard conspiracy theories that Flight 93 was shot down. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. And if it was shot down, I don't know how to say this without offending people. Please don't take this the wrong way. But if it was shot down, I can understand why it was shot down. This is a hijacked plane by fucking terrorists who are planning to die regardless. They had planned to fly Flight 93 into the White House or the Capitol. I've heard the White House. I've heard the Capitol building. I've mostly the Capitol building. Let's just say the Capitol building. They wanted to fly it into the Capitol building, so they were going to die regardless. They were not going to land that plane and get off that plane peacefully. So, if the United States government actually did shoot the plane down, then that's their decision. It sucks. I know it sucks. And rest in peace to everybody on that plane except for the terrorists. But if the government did shoot it down and they're keeping hush hush about it, maybe it's because they don't want to. Maybe it's because they don't want the public to find out what they really did to Flight 93. Who knows? We'll never know the true answer to that. We'll never know the true answers of what really happened that day on September 11th, 2001. I will always firmly believe in the fact that I don't believe it's a cover up, but I believe that there's a lot of things about that day that wane far from the official truth, from what the media tried to tell us about 9/11. There's too many things that happened that day that are so fucking eerie. Also, I bet nobody knows about this except for maybe a few people, but on the day before 9/11, on September 10th, 2001, former President Bill Clinton actually said this in a statement. He said this a couple of years ago, but he said on September 10th, 2001, that the United States government knew the exact location where Osama bin Laden was hiding. And they still didn't go after him. Because at that time, he wasn't considered a major threat to the United States. Now, he had already bombed a ship back in the 90s, but for some reason, they never went after him. They didn't really consider him that major of a threat. And Bill Clinton says that at the time they didn't. And Bill Clinton has made a statement saying that had he been president at that time, that he would have pulled the trigger and had the United States government go after Osama bin Laden, and they would have probably captured him or killed him on September 10th, 2001. Now, would that have stopped the events of 9/11 from happening? I don't know. That's hard to answer. We don't really know. If it did, then we wouldn't have lost 3,000 innocent people in New York City, in Pennsylvania, and in Washington, D.C. at the Pentagon. And Bill Clinton has stated that that's the biggest regret he's ever had in his life, is not going after Osama bin Laden on September 10th. They knew exactly where he was. They didn't pull the trigger. And they didn't get him. History possibly could be vastly different if they would have pulled the trigger and went after him on September 10th. But they didn't do it. Do I hate Bill Clinton because of that? Truthfully, a little bit, yeah. But again, he wasn't president at that time. Instead, our fucking president at the time was George Bush, that fucking dumbass, idiot, moron. You know what? I'm going to say it. I don't give a fuck. Retard. Yeah, I said it. Retard. Because George Bush was a fucking retard. I'm so sick and tired of people kissing this guy's ass so many years later, calling him a great president and stuff. What the fuck did he ever do great for this country? He acted like a pussy on September 11th, 2001 while we were getting attacked. And he nearly crashed the economy in 2008 to the point where we nearly underwent another Great Depression. It took Obama to get us out of that shit. I know my friend Shai doesn't like Obama, but let's be perfectly honest. Obama was better than Bush. He may not be perfect, but he was better than Bush. I fucking hate George Bush. To this day, I hate George Bush. I will always hate George Bush for his actions on 9/11 and for what he did in 2008 before he left office. To sit there and basically try to act all normal and everything in a classroom in Florida while your country that you are the leader of is getting attacked, to me, made him the biggest fucking pussy of a president I have ever seen in my lifetime. Had I been in charge, I would have got up from that classroom, went to go do a press statement, and here's exactly what I would have said. And they could have impeached me. I don't give a fuck. I say Iraq, Afghanistan. You have 24 hours to hand over Osama bin Laden and all of Al Qaeda. If you refuse to hand them over in the next 24 hours, I'm launching the nuclear warheads. I'm pressing the fucking button. And all my nukes will be going over to you. We are going to turn you into the next Sahara Desert. We don't give a fuck about your people. We don't give a fuck about your oil. We don't give a fuck about you at all. You either hand over Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda, or we're gonna fucking nuke you off the map. That's what I would have done. And if you want to call me an asshole for saying that, then fuck you. They came over to our country and killed our innocent people. I don't want to hear no excuses about their people getting killed by us. They came over here and killed our people. We got every right to go over there and kill their people. Whether you believe in it, whether you don't. They want to come over here and attack us and destroy our shit. We got every right to go over there and kill them and destroy their shit. Except the way that we went about it took us 10 fucking years when it should have been done in 24 hours. All of that whole situation could have been taken care of in just 24 hours if you would have just came out and said that. Who gives a fuck if Afghanistan and Iraq would declare war? Let them declare war! They basically declared war on us any fucking way when we went over there. Fuck them! Fucking go over there and bomb the shit out of them. Teach them a fucking lesson. Hey, don't come over here killing our people, otherwise we're gonna retaliate. I remember my father at the time stating that if he wasn't so crippled up at the time, my father stated that if he wasn't so crippled up, he would have fought in the war on terror. He would have served right back into the United States military just to fight these terrorists. But he couldn't do it because he was too crippled up. But my dad fucking hated them. And as the years went by, I hate them just as much as he does. 3,000 innocent people's lives were taken just like that. In the blink of an eye, if I could snap my fingers, just like that, gone. 3,000, outside of the fucking terrorists, of course, 3,000 innocent people's lives taken away. If I remember correctly, I think they said the oldest death of 9/11 was like 90-something years old, and the youngest was like 4 months old. You had children who died on September 11th, 2001 that are never going to get the chance to grow up and have a family of their own. Never have a chance to live the rest of their life. Never have a chance to have friends, have a girlfriend, have a boyfriend, have kids, have a family of their own. That's taken away from them. They're gone. Nothing can bring them back. They are gone forever. All the loved ones who just want to go to work on that day and make a paycheck for themselves, their families, their loved ones, to put food on their table, clothes on their back, and have a roof over their head. They're gone. Why? because some stupid fucking terrorists from overseas decided to come over here, hijack a bunch of planes, fly them into buildings, and now they're gone. Those people who just wanted to go about their day in peace, they're gone. Nothing can bring them back. I blame 9/11 for the death of 1990s culture. I know many people are going to say the 90s died on January 1st, 2000. While that is true in terms of the times, in my opinion, the culture, the vibe, the feeling of the 90s died on September 11th, 2001. The final day of 90s vibe, the final days of 90s culture was that final week before September 11th. September 10th, 2001 was the last time we ever got to experience that 90s vibe, because literally the very next morning the world would change forever. Fuck September 11th, 2001. Fuck Al Qaeda. Fuck everybody involved in that. I hope the maggots are eating their bodies fucking raw, and I hope their souls are burning in the depths of hell. And if by some eerie coincidence that the conspiracy theories are true, that the government actually did do it, then the people involved with 9/11, the actual people who were involved, may they burn in hell too. I fucking hate this day just as much as every other American hates this day too. And the mere fact that here we are 21 years later, and we have these stupid punk ass teenagers who want to sit back and crack jokes about this day. What the fuck is wrong with you people? Oh, it's just dark humor, man. I'm sorry. I don't find the deaths of 3,000 innocent people fucking funny, okay? I don't find 2 buildings collapsing to the ground and killing thousands of people funny. I don't find the fact that children were killed on September 11th, 2001 that will never grow up to have a life of their own or a family of their own. I don't find that shit funny. Fuck the terrorists that were involved that day. I will agree with you on that. Fuck them. Fuck the terrorists. But to sit back and crack jokes about what happened on that day, either number one, you weren't alive for 9/11. Number two, you were alive for 9/11, but you were way too young. You were probably a fucking toddler when it happened. So you don't know the exact ramifications of what really transpired that day. Or number three, you just don't give a fuck. You just don't have a care in the world. You just want to sit back and crack jokes about innocent people dying that just wanted to live their lives in peace. Fuck you. From the bottom of my heart, fuck every single one of you. How would it feel if your girlfriend was working in one of those towers and wasn't able to make it out? How would you feel if it was your mom and dad who were working in those towers and couldn't make it out? Your brother, your sister, your nephew, your cousin, your loved one. What if you didn't make it out? What if you had been working in those buildings that day? What if you had been on those planes? Think about that for a second. You want to sit here and make your dark humor jokes? I'm just going to say it right now. I don't like dark humor. I really don't. I really don't fucking like dark humor, especially when it involves people dying. I don't like Holocaust jokes. I don't like Pearl Harbor jokes. I don't like war jokes. I don't like 9/11 jokes. I don't like JFK jokes. I don't like jokes that involve the deaths of innocent people, okay? I really don't. I know I stated earlier about they came to our country and killed our people. I would go over there. Let's be honest. Let me be perfectly honest with you. And let me ask you people a question. If somebody broke into your house while you were away and murdered your loved ones, murdered your family, and they didn't get arrested by the police. They actually were able to get away with it. Wouldn't you want to go after them yourself? Wouldn't you want their head on a fucking pike? Wouldn't you want to get your hand on them and torture them, kill them yourself? And if you say no, you're a fucking liar. Oh, I'll just call the police. Okay. Yeah, you have that option, but you also have the option of doing something for your fucking self. Somebody just broke into your house, murdered your loved ones, and murdered your family members, and you're not going to do anything about it? Bullshit. Fucking bullshit. Fuck this day. Fuck September 11th, 2001. I fucking hate this day. I will forever hate this day to the depths of hell. Fuck the terrorists who were involved. If the government was somehow involved, fuck them too. A whole bunch of thousands of innocent lives that were taken away in a span of just a few hours. 2 iconic buildings demolished. Millions upon millions, hundreds of millions of dollars of damage. The worst terrorist attack to ever happen in the history of the world. A forever change in society as a whole now. Why do you think things are so censored nowadays? Why do you think we have SJWs and Karens and stuff? Most of this stuff that you see nowadays started all the way back on 9/11. Before that, we used to think that the world was we used to think that the world was a happy place, that no harm could come to us, that we'll live our lives in peace and harmony. And then September 11th comes around and gives us an immediate wake-up call that no, life is not fair. Life is not perfect. As much as you want to live in peace and harmony, unfortunately, there's people out there who don't want that life for you, even going so far as to take it from you. This is the first and last time I'm ever discussing this topic in full here on my channel. If I reference it in the future, I reference it in the future, but this is the first and only time I'm ever talking about it in full here on this channel. I know some people want to know my thoughts on 9/11, my history with 9/11. There you fucking go. It may not have been perfect, but that's my exact recollection, of September 11th, 2001, my thoughts of it, how I feel about the day overall. Will I ever forget September 11th, 2001? No, I will not. Rest in peace to the victims and the loved ones who unfortunately were lost on this day. To the terrorists, I hope your souls are burning in hell for all eternity. And to the Muslims, by the way, I'm not trying to make this into like some sort of racist thing toward you. There are good Muslims out there. Trust me. There are good Muslims out there. God bless the good ones. But to the ones who were involved in what they did that day, to the ones that plotted that terrorist attack against our country and killed thousands of innocent people, fuck each and every single one of you. And if you don't like me saying that, that's too damn bad. I felt bad for the good Muslims after 9/11. The Muslims that were just wanting to live their lives in peace. And unfortunately, they got targeted, harassed, stalked, bullied, threatened, beaten, and even to the point of being killed. Just because people take one look at them and think terrorist. I don't agree with that shit. I don't. I get why people thought that way at that time because obviously they were scared, but it doesn't mean I agree with it. There are good Muslims out there. There are good people out there in this world. But in closing for this video, I just have to say this. Don't live your life thinking that everything is going to be happy-go-lucky, sunshine and rainbows. Don't think that you're going to live a peaceful life. You're going to have those moments where reality is going to come hitting you square in the face. We all live one life. We never know when that life is going to come to an end. And we need to enjoy life to the fullest. September 11th, 2001 was the ultimate wake-up call, not just to me, but to everybody around the world, that this world is not a safe place. That a lot of really nasty, fucked up shit happens in this world. Daily, hourly, minute by minute. As I'm speaking, there are innocent people that are getting killed, shot and killed, to this very minute that I am talking. It's a fucked up world out there. And it's a damn shame that things are the way they are. That's all I have to say about this day. This is K-On Gaming HD, signing out. Peace, and I'll never forget September 11th, 2001. But God, do I fucking hate this day with a passion.